Ladies and gentlemen, brothers, sisters, comrades, friends, today we're going to be talking about favoritism in grading, right? So this Reddit post here on r/teachers, the series where I react to different Reddit posts online, give you my opinion. Again, I am a middle school social studies teacher and a doctoral candidate at the American College of Education studying curriculum and instruction. And so let's get to it. So favoritism in grading, high school. I was just having this conversation with a few non-teacher friends. Consider this scenario that happens in high school. Let's say two students have a 68%. One goofed off, didn't come to class, was disruptive, etc. He asked the teacher to bump his grade up to a 70, doesn't really put in effort, etc. She says no because of his actions. Another student has the same grades, but is the opposite, / comes to class, tries his best, etc. Teacher helps that kid out. Now, keep in mind, teacher tried to help both students throughout the quarter, as is the responsibility of all teachers. I thought that it wasn't unfair, since grades reflect mastery, but also effort. I think consistent effort should be rewarded for primary school students. Do you think the scenario above is unfair? Would love to see your thoughts. That is a wonderful, wonderful question, and I'm happy that somebody mentioned this here because it's nice and easy to react to. All right, so when I'm thinking about favoritism in grading or rounding up a grade in general, there's a few things that you want to be considering right away, and I wrote them down on my little list here. The first one is district policy. Are you allowed to round it all in your district? Because if you're not, then you shouldn't do it because people are just going to get on your case, and that's the last thing that you want as a teacher, people getting on your case. I don't know about you. I like being left alone and in good standing with everybody. And so just worry about your policy for rounding. And in some districts, it's no problem. Like in the district that I teach in, for example, every single student gets a 50% automatically. I mean, you don't even got to show up to class ever. I mean, you just not even show up. You just get rounded to a 50, right? And from 0 to 50, right? Makes no sense to me. I disagree with it vehemently, but that's the way that it is. And so, it's built into our system. We have to round. Now, whether or not you want to round outside of that 50%, that is up to you. You have complete control over that. And it's however you feel the student has done. And we'll talk about these factors here in a second. So the next thing I would consider would be the effort of the student, as well as their behavior. And even more importantly than that, right, I would focus on the objectivity behind that, if you can, if possible. And what do I mean by objectivity? Well, all right, can you look at referral data, for example? Like if a student has had, 10 referrals throughout the quarter, maybe that person probably shouldn't get their grade rounded up. Whereas a student with 0 or 1 referral maybe can have it rounded up. And so if you're just it's less subjective there in some regards. And so you could say maybe at the start of your quarter or semester or whenever, maybe you haven't done this yet, and maybe you need a fresh start doing it. Say, look, if you have more than 2 write-ups, you're not getting a rounded up grade. I don't care what have you could have a 69.9999999%. I'm not rounding you up to a 70. And that's because it's the policy. And you can say, maybe no more rounding up anything more than 1%. I'm not going to do it, right? But you got to vet these policies out yourself. And so starting off now, just make these subjective decisions a little bit, but do take that into consideration the next time around. Remember, always trying to grow, and it's no shame if you're not doing things perfectly the first time around, or if you're just coming up this problem now. No shame in that. But another thing I would do here is just avoid complacency as well, and try to make sure that it's motivating students that rounded up grade, but it's all in a positive manner, not in a negative manner. And what do I mean by that, right? So if you round up a grade to some student, they might think, oh, well, I'm perfectly fine. Mr. Phillips rounds up my grades, and I don't really have to worry. And so yada yada yada. I'm just not gonna care that much. I'm not gonna go super try hard on my work, and because I know I got a good grade this last quarter. Whereas if you have the opposite end of the distribution would be, oh, wow, check that out. I feel really good about myself now. My hard work paid off. I need to continue it, and I'm going to try super hard in Mr. Phillips' class and do very, very well. And so there's two ends of the spectrums. I'm not denying that here, but just make sure that you have a good idea of which one that's going to where that student's going to fall, and maybe you don't really take that into consideration, but it's just something to keep in mind as you're doing it. At least for me, especially now because you're only doing it subjectively. Another thing here, well, I guess that's the last thing. So I guess just round it up here to sum everything up here. I would say focus on your district policy first, right? Do whatever they say. Next, I would focus on effort, behavior, and then try to make it as objective as you possibly can. And then from there, obviously, it's a little bit more, easier for you. But until then, do it subjectively. But I don't see any harm doing effort or behavior rounding up. I've done so in the past, and I think that it can be nice for the students, especially the ones who come there every day and they're really trying their hardest, and that maybe they're just not going to get above that for whatever reason. But if they're really trying, then it shouldn't be that much of an issue. And so there's standards that you can do for that objectivity. I mean, just focus on the effort in terms of like behavior, which might be tracked by referral data. Focus on the amount of zeros that a student has if they're not turning in work constantly to redo it, if that's one of the policies that you have. That is, it isn't in my classroom, but maybe it's not that same for you. Just track some things like this and make it a little bit more objective, so that way it's not like people can't come back and say, oh, well, you're biased and against my kid, yada yada yada. It's like, well, sometimes you should be biased against somebody, right? It doesn't matter if they're a student or not. And you have to recognize this, because if somebody is treating your class as if it's a joke, and and I understand they got the 68 the same as the other person, right? But if they're messing around constantly, they've got a million different referrals, they're showing up late to class, they're not trying at all, they're breaking the rules, and then, it comes around, they're not doing any missing work to try to correct themselves. It's like, yeah, I mean, the bias is in favor of the person who showed up to class. They're trying hard. They're trying to redo work, even if it's not working out for them. It's still trying, right? And it's that effort, So, the bias is in favor of them. And if you had to round up a grade, I'm going to pick them, And the other one, they probably don't deserve it. And it's not to say that you're not going to help that student and that you're not going to try your hardest to make sure that they're successful in the future. But what it is to say is that, are they deserving of that passing grade versus the other student? And obviously, you could, at the end of the day, you could look at your grades and say, is it really fair if they both technically perform the same on paper? It's a moral argument. I guess it depends where you fall. I mean, I support either one, whatever teachers want to do. I mean, that's their business, but just something to take into consideration. So, this is a little bit of a rant here, but I hope you guys enjoyed. You guys can find me on social media at Ian Phillips USA. Please be sure to subscribe. Please. And we'll talk to you later. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good one.